Time to play in the sandbox again. Welcome to another episode of the GameSmith. In today's episode, we're going to be building piles of ruins for use in a desert setting. We're going to be focusing on the scattered terrain and debris aspects of this build because we're going to make the actual buildings in another video series. We're going to start by choosing a basing material. The material of the bases doesn't matter, but they should be sturdy and vary in size. We can use chipboard, cardboard, cork sheets, foam board, and even wood and MDF board. I'm going to use chipboard so that I can easily change the size and shape of each base. First, we want to plan out the shapes of the bases we'll build our debris piles on. I'm going to use several different shapes, at least 2 large bases and several smaller bases. Chipboard is durable, but we don't want any small offshoots out the sides that might weaken over time. We can cut the chipboard with a normal pair of scissors. We don't have to match our plan exactly, but we do want our corners to be rounded and try to avoid any jagged edges. I don't want to have to make more of these shapes if I need them, so I'll cut a few extra in different sizes now. Here we have some tinfoil that I found at the local dollar store. Any brand will do, but you don't want to use premium or costly foil for this project. Any other lightweight and shapeable material, such as styrofoam, will also work for this project. Next, we crumple up the sheet of tin foil to create a mound that will form the foundation of our sand dune that we're going to build. You may have to experiment with the amount of foil used to create the best size mound given the size of the base. We don't want the foil hill to be too tall or flat or the slope to be too severe. Our goal is to create a sloping sand dune shape. Now we can use our trusty hot glue gun to attach our tin foil mound to the base. We need to completely secure the tin foil down, but we don't want any of the hot glue to spill out of the edges. We absolutely want to avoid blobs and beads of hot glue on the edges of our base. For this next step, we're going to use the handles of these scissors to shape the tin foil, but any object with a blunt edge will also work. We use the object to compress the tin foil into a hill-like shape. This is how we can make sure that we have a gradual slope on all sides where we want them. Be careful that you don't compact the tinfoil so much that it doesn't function as the base of our sand dune. Next, we want to paint the outside edge of our base to hide the chipboard. We're going to be covering the base with sand, but if the sand doesn't completely cover the outside edges, we won't have any unsightly cardboard. We're going to use some dollar store acrylic tan paint, but any sandy colored paint will work. We don't need the color of the paint and the sand to match exactly, but this paint is a much closer color than the brown chipboard. Next, we're going to use some sprue to create some bricks. Sprue comes from plastic model kits. These pieces are leftover frames that surrounded the plastic model parts, which for the most part have already been removed. We're going to cut the sprue into small brick-sized pieces. You can use a hobby knife, utility knife, precision side cutters, or whatever combination of cutting tools you prefer. We want to remove all the bumps, knobs, and spiky bits to create long beams of sprue. Then we cut them into different lengths of brick-like shapes. Here we have a collection of our cut sprues. We're going to use super glue to build our brick walls. The brand of super glue doesn't matter. I found these little super glue tubes at Dollarama. Our ruin walls will be basic structures we can make just by lining up our sprue bricks. Once we have our first layer down, we just stagger the bricks on top of one another. Because we want these bricks to appear to be weathered by time, sand, and wind, we're going to space the bricks further apart than normal. We simply keep repeating the same process until we get the wall to the height we want. If we keep the wall to only 3 or 4 brick layers tall, the result will look like the rest of the wall has collapsed. We've used these Creatology bricks on other terrain builds, but now we're going to use them to create desert ruins. These foam bricks are great for building 28mm scale terrain. The color of these bricks are perfect for desert building, and the porous structure of the styrofoam makes the blocks look like pumice or sandstone. Check out our stone tower video for more information on this great product. I'll put a link in the corner for you and in the description below. We can use these foam bricks to create collapsed and ruined structures. We're going to use hot glue to attach the foam bricks, so we need to plan where we're going to place them. The hot glue doesn't allow for much reorganizing of the foam bricks once placed, so make sure you're placing them where you want them. We can place the bricks on our tinfoil hills, lay them flat, stand them up straight, tilt them, cut them to different sizes, and stack them to create different scatter terrain sites. We don't need the bricks to be arranged into a recognizable building-like structure. Like so many ruins, we can just have blocks of stone jutting out from the ground. Let your imagination guide you to produce the scatter terrain features you want for your table. Next, we're going to use some decorative sand I found at Dollar Tree that is the perfect color for desert sand. We're also going to mix it with some PVA glue. We simply pour the sand into a sealable container and add a lot of PVA glue. I used the whole bag of sand, about half a cup of PVA, and some water. What's important about this concoction is the thickness or consistency of the sand and glue. If the mixture is difficult to stir, it's much too thick, and we can add some water to thin it out. Don't forget that you can always add water, but you can't subtract it, so add the water sparingly. We want the mixture to have a semi-fluid consistency so that it's similar to runny oatmeal. For the next step, I've put a glove on since our mixture is very sticky and messy. We have our sand mixture nearby. We also have a few different sized sticks so that we can maneuver our mixture into the tiny spaces of our build. We begin adding our mixture to our tinfoil hill with a craft stick. We can glob it on to start with and use the sticks to spread and smooth the sandy mixture over the whole build, including up to the edges. If the mixture has the right amount of moisture in it, the sand becomes a self-leveling fluid. We don't have to pile the sand. A thin layer is usually enough to cover the base and our tinfoil hill. When the terrain is done, place it on a non-stick surface to dry, otherwise it might get inadvertently glued to the work surface. After 24 hours of drying, our scatter terrain desert ruins are hard as rock. The sand mixture has leveled and smoothed itself to create these awesome looking dunes pressed up against our stone wall. We could leave this piece as is and it would work great on a desert themed game table. On this piece, the sand mixture has buried the bottom level of the sprue to make it appear as though the desert is consuming the ruins. We can leave the foam blocks as they are, but the sprue bricks definitely need some extra attention, but we'll revisit that in a moment. Next, we want to remove any of the excess sand stuck under the outside edge of our scatter terrain. We do this to make sure the base sits flat on our play surface and doesn't scratch our maps or tables. We can also see that despite the amount of moisture we heaped onto the chipboard, the cardboard did not warp or buckle and remained flat. Now we can add a few decorations to our desert ruins. We're going to start with washes, and Citadel has two brownish shades called Seraphim Sepia and Agrax Earthshade. Other colors and products are available to crafters online and at your favorite hobby store. Crafters can even make their own washes. All we need is an old abused brush to spread the wash over our bricks. We're going to use the Seraphim Sepia to add some color to our sprue ruins. We want to keep the wash off the sand at the base of the sprue wall. If it turns out we get some of the wash on the sand, you can remove it by dipping a clean brush in water and soaking the area you want spotless. You then use another clean and dry brush to soak up the now diluted wash and wipe it on a dry cloth. Next, we're going to add a light wash to our foam bricks, so their color isn't so close to that of the sand. We can put the wash on our foam bricks at full strength to begin with, making sure to get some of the sepia into the porous features on the foam. Then with a damp brush we can thin or dilute the wash and spread it out over the other parts of the bricks. We can layer the same color of wash or mix and match to change the visual texture of the stone. Let your imagination run wild and check out some real desert ruins online to find a color scheme you like. We don't need to cover the entire brick or even all of the bricks. We can create a patchwork of earthy tones to make our scatter terrain appear as though it's being slowly reclaimed by the desert. Now that the wash on our sprue walls has dried, we can add a Drybrush layer. We can use the same tan paint we added to our chipboard bases. We add very little paint to our brush and remove the excess on our napkin before lightly sweeping the brush over the bricks. All we're trying to do is catch the edges, corners, and raised textures of our sprue walls. We may end up having to do more than one layer or switch brushes to get down into the tiny corners and between the bricks. One last embellishment we can add to our build comes in the form of these Army Painter grass tufts. I've chosen these lowland shrubs and mountain tufts because of their colors. There are large, medium, and small tufts that we can spread over our terrain to add some desert foliage. We can also use these wild tufts from the Scenery Diorama products line from Vallejo. My local hobby store started carrying these, and I really like them because you can't tell from the unopened packages, but the tufts are all different shapes and not just round. The tufts are sticky on the back, but to make sure they adhere to the sand, we're going to add some super glue to the bottom of each tuft. We're going to add a few tufts around our build, but we don't want to create the impression of a garden. My thought process here is that by adding the tufts, we can assume that there's a water source nearby, underground or in the ruins around an oasis. Plus, the terrain looks more interesting than just barren dunes with a few stones stacked nearby. The final result speaks for itself. Of course, you should absolutely add as much or as little decoration to your own desert ruins as you choose. I really like using these pre-painted styrofoam bricks for making structures, especially for desert terrain. These debris piles can be used in your Warhammer or Star Wars tabletop game. I made these with the Pathfinder Adventure Path Mummy's Mask in mind, since there are so many encounters sprinkled throughout a ruined necropolis and the desert beyond. I'm so happy with these pieces and how the sand dunes turned out that I'm going to be building more desert scatter terrain. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and find some of our ideas helpful and inspirational for your own crafting projects. If you'd like to support us here at the GameSmith, there are a number of ways you can help us out. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up button and give us a like. Ask a question or leave a comment below. Don't forget to tell a friend about the channel. Check out our website at thegamesmith.org and read our free monthly blog. Finally, you can join us on Patreon, which gives you access to content like our roundtable podcasts. Your support in any form is very much appreciated. Until next time, I'll see you at the table.